Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I'm Dr. David Pendergrass. I want to talk about abortion. I do, and this is going to be a very difficult subject for some people to listen to, and others, well, for most people it's just difficult to listen to. I'm not going to have the time, nor do I wish to cover every single detail about the issue, of course, but I want to talk about a few things and perhaps provide some Christian clarity to the topic for those who need it. And by abortion, I mean the willful killing of a fetus, the deliberate willful killing of a fetus, whether the person does it themselves or they go to a place and have a doctor kill the baby. It is the willful, deliberate killing of a child, of a fetus. Now, I'll just unpack things as we move along. The word fetus is a Latin word for baby. So fetus means baby, and that's all it means. But of course, we have different stages of development of the human child. When you kill a child that has come to term, comes out of the mother's womb, that's called infanticide, like infant infanticide. Infanticide in the ancient world with an abortion both occurred in the ancient world. It's a little more difficult to determine the frequency of abortions in the ancient world. And by that I mean, let's say, from the 4th century backwards. So certainly for the Christian, I'm thinking around the time of Jesus, but also even before the time of Jesus in the Old Testament era as well. It's difficult to tell how much abortions happen because there's not a lot of tactile evidence for it. It doesn't occur in the literature much, and of course there's no archaeological remains for abortions, so the killing the child inside the womb. We do know what happened because of some evidence, and we know that it was somewhat widespread. What we do have a lot more evidence for is infanticide. Infanticide certainly did occur. Egyptians, as far as we can tell, did not do it. Egyptians were known for having all births come to full term as much as possible. Now, Greeks, Carthaginians, Romans, others absolutely committed infanticide. I mean, it's well known, it's well documented in the ancient world. This is all through the literature in Greek and Roman literature. If you're not aware, thousands and thousands of letters and portions of letters have been discovered throughout the Greco-Roman era. Of course, a huge chunk of them are about taxes, or they're just collections, or they're counting the barley or whatever they're shipping on the boat or whatever. But there are all kinds of texts that shed light on what was going on in the ancient world. And one that's really well known comes from about the year 1 BC. So this is right at the time of Jesus' birth, roughly. And this is, I'm quoting, here's a letter that apparently a Roman citizen is writing back home. And he says this, quote, "I am still in Alexandria." And then he says some other things. And he says, "I beg and plead with you to take care of our little child. And as soon as we receive wages, I will send them to you. In the meantime, if, good fortune to you, you give birth, if it is a boy, let it live. If it is a girl, expose it." Exposure was the chief way that Greeks and Romans killed their babies. It's the chief way. And some of the literature suggests that they didn't consider it to be murder because when they put the child out, that people could come pick up the baby to adopt it or take it to a temple to become, say, a virgin or a priestess there in the temple. But oftentimes what usually typically happened was they either suffocated the child or left it exposed out at the trash dump. One place way up in England, they discovered, archaeologists did not too long ago, a few years ago, a cache, a huge collection of infant bones, around 100 of them, that apparently dumped into a sewer underneath a brothel. So this is evidence throughout the Greco-Roman world that they killed their babies often. Christians were really weird. When the Christian religion took over and Christians spread throughout the Greco-Roman Empire, they like the Egyptians, said, stop. Of course, they did this because of the Christian worldview, but also the Jews before them, the Jews also did not commit abortion or infanticide. Now, there's a reason why, particularly in the Jewish and Christian worldview, but we'll talk about that in a second. What I'm saying is, it was common, and not to mention Asian populations and other parts of the world, infanticide is widespread throughout the world. So it's what the common pagans do. It's just the common default stance of people around the world. Now, if you're a Greco-Roman scholar, I know there's more nuance there, but I'm going to move on. The issue, it seems to me, comes down to two things. Is the child inside of the mother a human being? And 2, is it moral to kill human beings? Or is it immoral? Let me say a few things. These are common phrases I hear all the time. First off, or common expressions or whatnot. First off, this pro-life versus pro-choice. Let's be real clear what we're talking about. Pro-life, of course, means I support not killing babies. Pro-choice means I do support the option of not killing the baby or killing the baby. That is, a person who is pro-choice is saying, I am for the option to choose to kill babies. So pro-choice sounds powerful in an American or a democratic kind of setting, but what we're talking about is the ability to choose to kill. Let's be real clear about what that is. That's the whole point. Now, they're going to say to choose to do what with my body. Pro-abortionists will say, of course, and we'll talk about that in a second, but we're not talking about what to do with your own body. People who are against abortion do not support killing babies or humans. They are not talking about what you choose to do with your own appendages, your own arms and legs and so forth. Another thing that's worth mentioning is when we talk about abortion, it is debated whether or not abortion is murdering or simply killing. Now, in legalese, there's a lot of nuance here. I'm not talking about, I don't want to talk about the nuance, but really the distinction between murder and killing usually comes down, legally speaking and ethically speaking, to 2 different kinds of things. Typically, murder is defined as that which is premeditated. They need to demonstrate in a law court that the person wanted to harm and kill the other person. Well, if that's the only definition, then abortion is most certainly murdering. The second thing is, of course, you have to assume it's a human being. He or she, the fetus, is a human being. But secondly, oftentimes it's made the case that murder is not just the willful intent to kill a human being, but there's malice in their heart. There's some kind of rage or hatred or something. It's premeditated in that they want to end their lives based on malice. And based on that definition, many people say that abortion is not murder because the doctors who are killing the babies in the mama are not mad at the babies. They're not doing it out of self-defense. That is to say, their motivation matters much when it comes to legal issues of murder or not murder. So it's up to you. How you define murder determines whether or not you define abortion as murder. I personally go back and forth. Part of me thinks it is murder. You want to kill the baby, but I understand the notion of malice. And I'm going to pretend that the doctors who are killing babies all over the world are not just mad at babies and they want to go kill them, or even the parents. I will assume that the mamas who decide to do this also are not willfully trying to say or demonstrating their frustration. I'm so mad at the baby, I'm going to kill him or her. So I will say killing just to be as generic as possible versus murdering the baby, just to play it safe. The other thing is this expression people say, when does life begin? That's a dumb expression. It's a dumb question to say life began, because at no point does a human being go from being dead to alive. So a sperm is very much alive. An egg is very much alive. Dead sperm can't cause pregnancy, and dead eggs don't cause pregnancy. So live sperms and live eggs cause pregnancy. In one, you might say, lively moment, one of the sperms, a master swimmer, makes it to an egg, and they both stay alive. So the expression, when does life begin, it needs to be nuanced. What they mean is, when does independent life or individuation begin? The question has been answered for a very, very long time in biology, and that is when they reach the state of zygote. When the sperm goes inside of an egg and the tail breaks off and those two unite, they now are a zygote. Now be clear about this. A zygote is the word we use to describe the first stage of development in a human being. It is like saying, is an acorn a tree? Answer is yes. It's the first stage of development in treehood. Is being an adolescent a human being? Yes. It's one of the stages of being toward adulthood. Is infancy a human being? An infant? Obviously, yes. An infant. It's just so these are words we use for stages of development in a human being. A zygote is the earliest stage. We know that because a zygote is operating functionally different than the mother's biological system. The zygote is not forming part of the liver. The zygote is not helping the mama sort through her urine. The zygote is not helping the mama form muscle formation when she's at the gym. The zygote is not a part of a function of the muscle groups or digestive tracts inside of a mama. It is, in fact, as a zygote, an independent functioning organism that is now using the mother's resources to grow independently. So, when does life begin? Well, when does individual life begin? Immediately. When the sperm and egg join together to form the zygote. It is the earliest stage of development. Then the question is, well, David, is it a person yet? Well, first off, it's not an it. Well, David, it's just a form of cells put together. Well, it is not an it. It's a he or she, depending on the chromosomes. Of course, it's not an it. So when is he or she a human being? Well, so is the zygote a human? Well, the answer is, what else would it be? Is the zygote canine? Is it a tree? Is it a shoe? When a human egg and a human sperm join together, it is in fact of the species Homo sapiens. This is not a difficult question to answer. Is the zygote human? Yes. It is not a spider. It's not a house. It is in fact a human being. But David, is a human being a person? Is the zygote a person? I like how Greg Kokel says this. What's the difference? What's the difference? Person, from the Latin word, of course, is a way we individuate human beings. So one human being is a human person. That's how we distinguish. The answer is, it is an individual. Is it an individual life? Are you saying is it an individual human being separate from the mother? The answer is, of course, yes. Well, when did that happen, David? I just told you when it became, when the sperm and the egg joined together to form a he-she zygote. That's when a human person first formed. If this is still confusing, and someone says, it's no different from wiping out cells out of my mouth on a cotton swab, let me ask you a question. Let's be honest. Let's imagine for a second you time travel. You go back and you meet your mother. You, whoever's listening, you go back to meet your mother. She just found out she's pregnant with you. And you overhear a conversation. She panics. She calls her mom or husband or boyfriend or friend and says, I can't go for this. I just can't. I can't go this. I don't have the money I just don't have the money, and I'm going to have an abortion. Yep, let's do it. Where are my car keys? And then you can speak to your mom. What do you tell her? What do you tell her? You give her a high five? Good call, Mom. Makes sense to me. It's just a bunch of cells. That's all it is. If I were you, I would only think about the cells. Take away what I actually am. I mean, let's be real for a second. What would you choose? If I went and gathered up all the acorns on the planet and all the seedlings on the planet, how many trees would exist in a generation or two? That is to say, it is irrelevant. Of course, we all know that the stage of development does not make something more important. Are adolescents more important than an infant? Are senior citizens more important than an adult? And if so, why? Why is the stage of development of zygote or embryo less important to you? There are many people who argue, in fact, it is. And they say it is less important, even as an infant. I've read philosophers who argue that infanticide is completely moral, and that's why they should do it, especially if you're just an evolved Homo sapien who is just an evolved primate. Now, of course, there are people who argue that you have to argue by function. That's what many people have done throughout history. So that you would say that the fetus is not human until it has a function, or I might say until it has consciousness, or until it heart beats, until the brain is formed. All these are absolutely just random choices. There's nothing moral about these choices. And there's something incredibly dangerous with the ambivalence of anyone choosing when a human being has function. I could use the exact same arguments, and I guess people would do this, and they would argue the same thing, to say that all senior citizens who become senile should be killed. All senior citizens who no longer can drive. All retired people should be killed because they no longer have a job and serve society. These kind of arbitrary distinctions between function and non-function are precisely the arguments made by the Nazis, by anybody who decides to end a whole people group. This is incredibly dangerous and incredibly immoral. That's why, in the Christian worldview, and I would argue, even if you're not a Christian, the commonsensical moral view that any human being would understand, outside of sociopaths, is that human beings are not a means to an end. We are not valuable because of a function that we serve. We are an end. We're valuable because we are human, not because we serve a function. So whatever reason you've always said, if you're listening to this, that abortion is okay because the fetus can't serve a function, my question is, why did you stop at that point? What moral grounds do you have to decide that functionary reason is ample reason to kill a human being? Secondly, I want to ask you the question, are you consistent? Do you also picket Congress and so forth by choosing to kill all human beings who don't fit your function? Do you kill off everybody who has a stroke? Do you kill everybody who develops a disease? Does everybody who gets cancer, should they just be killed on the spot? You need to be consistent with your moral values, and I find this overwhelmingly immoral to arbitrarily choose functionary purposes for value of human life. Is to ask the doctors to do their very best job to save the life of the child. But if my wife dies in the process, then so be it. Now that leads me to the other thing I'm going to say. The next part is to say, one is the embryo and the zygote rather human person? The answer seems to me, yes. Life begins right then. Then the question is it moral to kill a human being? And what we say, innocent human being. And this is where I'm going to do a podcast or two on this issue. This is so confusing for most people. But in ethics, we make a distinction between moral values and moral duties. A moral value is something, you might say, in the abstract. Showing honor, protecting innocent human life, being honest or telling the truth, being faithful or loyal to a person, being trustworthy, being kind. These are moral values. The moral duty is, what do I do in the moment to express those values? What do I do? What is my duty in that very situation to express those values? When you take values together, in ethicists, we call them the weight of the rule, the weight of the value. That is to say, not all values are considered the same moral weight. They're not as heavy. They're not as valuable. So, showing kindness is very valuable. Yeah, it's not very valuable, it's valuable, sure. Is it more important to show kindness to someone than it is to preserve innocent human life? Most people on the planet would say no. It's more important to preserve innocent human life. Therefore, the weight of the value to preserve innocent human life weighs more than showing kindness. Does being honest outweigh protecting innocent human life? Most people will say no. If someone came to your door right now, a mad man, and we'll say he's a man, he has a gun and he says, "Tell me who your family is." And you say, "Why is that?" He says, "Well, I'm going to go murder him." Do you tell them the truth? Some of you right now might be saying yes, because I don't like my family. But let's assume you kind of like your family. I imagine most people, of course, are going to lie. They're either going to be quiet and say nothing, therefore they don't have to lie, or they're going to lie. I don't have a family. They're not in right now. Yeah, they're 3 houses down. They moved to Mexico. Whatever you're going to say. So the fact is, you're probably going to lie. So, in the moment, what you've done is chosen one value, protect innocent human life, over the value to tell the truth. And in that moment, you have done, many people would argue, the right thing. The right thing. Now, there's a particular ethical class, and I won't go into all this right now, but there are people who would argue you've done the right thing. I myself would argue you have done the right thing. The reason why I'm convinced you've done the right thing is because preserving human life is a greater good, a greater moral value than telling the truth. Now the question is it a moral value to protect innocent human life? There are people who write today who argue that no, basically that's overstated. But most people who support abortion do also believe it is good to protect innocent human life. That's why for them, what matters the most is trying to determine whether or not the zygote is in fact human. And I've already covered that. The zygote is human. The next question is, what about innocent human life? This is why people like myself and the average Christian are so appalled by abortion. Because it means that we are, as humans, certainly as Americans, constantly killing innocent human life. And it is a profound moral value to protect him or her. I've heard different statistics. I've heard over 50 million. Just the other day, I heard over 61 million babies have been aborted since 1973, since Roe v. Wade. This one statistic I heard that every second, three babies have been killed. Do you realize that the most dangerous place to be on earth for a human being is inside of a mother's womb? You are statistically more likely to die there than anywhere else. Well, David, sure is easy for you to say, but you don't know what it's like. I didn't want to get pregnant. Did you know that I've read several studies demonstrate that most abortions are due to one single cause? You might wrap it up by saying this: it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. Well, that is profoundly abhorrent. I can't believe that inconvenience is enough to cause someone to kill innocent human life. And whatever your excuse is for whatever it is you are going to miss out on in life, you can apply that to any other stage of development of a human being. So, David, we understand this child's father is not going to pay the bills. Okay? So therefore, we should kill all teenagers as soon as their father stops paying the bills. I'm sorry, Timmy. I have to shoot you. Or better yet, let's do it like an abortion. We'll suck you out the vacuum or chop you to pieces or poison you to death. But just for ease sake, we'll shoot you because that way I can save money on my bullets. I won't have to shoot you because your dad stopped paying the bills. Mom, why do you want to kill me? Well, son, I need an education. And your life really is getting in the way. I've decided to get my master's degree, and I can't do both. It's time to kill you, Timmy. Mom, why you have the gun pointed at me? Well, because of the social stigma that comes along with having an unruly teenager. In my culture, in my environment, my neighborhood, people don't like teenagers. I've got to end you now. I've got to kill you. David, what about rape? What about rape? Did you know that most abortions that occur are not about rape? Only a small portion are about rape. Let me do back to my analogy. Mom, why is your gun pointing at me? Timmy, I just discovered that your dad's a rapist. Mom, why are you trying to kill me? Because your dad's a rapist. Children who have rapist fathers and mothers shouldn't live. They shouldn't live. Does that make sense to you at all, listener? Does it make sense to kill innocent human life because the parent is a rapist? Is that the way to make it right? Should we go out and kill? You know how many people I know who were almost aborted? I know one guy who's an evangelist. He's preached all over the world, helped bring thousands of people into the kingdom of God. His mom was raped and had him. And on the stories go. Let me ask you, if your mom was raped and she was going to the abortion clinic and you could stop her, what would you say? You're right, Mom. You're right. I don't ever want to have a dad who's a rapist. So go ahead and end my life. Well, David, what about when the mother's life is at stake? Did you realize under 1% of all abortions take place because of that? It's extremely rare. Here is the one issue, the one caveat of all abortion that is not so clear case. Everything else is a clear case. Everything else is a clear case of abortion being profoundly immoral. The difference here is this. There are now two human beings, both innocent, whose lives are at stake. Which innocent human life do you choose? What blows my mind in politics and on the news and so forth is how blithely, quickly politicians will say, in case of rape, incest, or the mother's life at stake. It's only this one that is more difficult. The reason why, again, is because two innocent human lives are at stake. So it's not so clear-cut, because then the issue is, well, which life do I choose to try to protect? My view is, since these are the moral values appealing to both, that's when the parents must decide. The parents must decide. And if a parent decides to do that, it's not because they're just scraping out some dead cells. They're deliberately asking the doctor to kill the human being inside of them. I have mixed views about this. On the one hand, if my wife had a baby that was going to threaten her life, on the one hand, my immediate response is, I need to protect my wife because, not, by the way, I'm going to say this one more time, not because the human baby inside her, it does not matter and is irrelevant and who gives a rip, but because I made an oath to her in a covenant and marriage ceremony to protect her. And unfortunately, in this unfortunate event, I need to protect her from a child's growth and development, and her body can't handle both. On the one hand, that's my view. On the other hand, I have a suspicion that what me and Elaine would decide to ask the doctors to do their very best job to preserve the life of my human child. And if my wife dies tragically in the process, then so be it. Because if you're a parent now and you have a child, and you're driving in a car and your child, one of your children, they're in the car with you and you fall off on the bridge and you get into the water and you're sinking. You're not a very good swimmer. Your child's not a very good swimmer too, but you're working hard. But your child is holding on to you for dear life, knowing that your child's going to die. And you think, if I don't let go of the child, we're both going to die. What do? Do you reach down and kick your child in the face or choke your child to death so that you survive? Or do you ask a nearby swimmer, I can't do it myself, come by and choke and kill my child so that I can make it? Or do you not, by instinct, grab your child, push your child up above your head, and kick with all your might, knowing that you will do whatever it takes to have your child survive? I think I know what I would do. I absolutely would save my child. If you've committed an abortion, if you've had your baby, your zygote, or an infant killed, there is forgiveness to be found in the cross of Jesus. Your life is not over. There's grace to be had. If you're considering an abortion, I beg you to wait. Consider your options. There are so many options. And at the time of this podcast, almost 5,000 babies have been killed. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. If you want to listen to more, go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and look at one of the tabs that says podcast. If you click that, it'll take you straight to my podcast on iTunes, or you can search for it on iTunes if you want to, A Glimpse of the Kingdom. But also on my website, you'll see another way to get, if you're an Android listener on your phone or you just don't use Mac computers. Again, davidpendergrass.com, and click podcast. It'll take you exactly where you need to go, and you can subscribe from there. and get this as often as you like, and also see my blogs and so forth. If you want to get me to come to your organization or church, otherwise to do some consulting, you need to go to davidpendergrassconsulting.com. davidpendergrassconsulting.com. You'll see the information there. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, you can find me at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass.